We're back with Formula One again, and today we're going to be discussing about the qualifying that went down a couple of hours ago. Kimi Antonelli took pole, and with me to discuss that is Mustafa. My name is Stila Falabi. Welcome to another Formula One show.
All right, whether George Russell wants to admit it or not, can talk about his car having problems with grip. Some races he talks about having the flu or whatever, but Hamilton is going to not Hamilton, but Antonelli is going to make this a title race this year, perhaps. And it's becoming clearer and clearer as far as we've predicted that very soon in the future, if not this year, Antonelli is going to be the best driver at Mercedes, unless of course Verstappen comes and replaces George Russell next year. What we saw in this track was interesting because we know that Antonelli can is better at low speed cornering than Russell. So on tracks with low speed cornering, like last week at China, we expect Antonelli to give Russell a run for his money. But now Antonelli is showing that he's actually better on technical and high speed cornering, or at least for this week. He did a lot better in sector two, where he got most of his time, which is the S's. So for him to be dominating on the S's against George Russell is very, very interesting. Now, Russell was complaining that he didn't feel grip in the back of his tires and that his setup wasn't optimal. But I think these conditions are equal for everybody, and the main reason Antonelli was able to beat him is that basically he has a much better feel for the grip than Russell does. This is the same as with Hamilton versus Leclerc. Here at high speed Suzuka, which is low downforce and actually does have a very little grip, especially in the rear. Drivers who like pointy setups and can handle loose rear ends do a lot better than those who need to have that planted feeling in the rear like Hamilton does. And apparently George Russell needs it as well. So I think that's one of the main reasons Antonelli was able to get that advantage in sector two and in general in this track, which is has a low grip feel. Now, also when we look at the telemetry, this is becoming a pattern all season. Antonelli has a more aggressive approach to cornering than Russell. Russell likes to take a longer, more gentler braking zone into the corners. Antonelli waits longer, breaks more, and breaks aggressively, does less lifting and coasting than Russell, and has a better feel. He knows when to rotate a little bit better than he does into the corners. We saw that at the hairpin. He brought in a lot more entry speed into the hairpin and broke a lot more later than Russell. So this to me goes to show that the reason Antonelli is able to do all of this is that the Mercedes this year has a more pointier setup, and also just in general, Antonelli can handle higher minimum speeds into corners. So he's having a more aggressive setup, and it's paying off for him. And he's able to brake hard, downshift, sort of like Verstappen does, and still keep the car balanced. Because usually the payoff for later braking with more aggressive braking and downshifting is that you lose the stability of the car. But this is just how talented Antonelli is. And this goes back to what I'm saying again. Antonelli's talent now is beginning to outshine um, George Russell's meticulousness, his technical understanding, his linear approach, the fact that he's on top of little things like software and everything. None of that matters. The professor is losing to the speed demon. And on top of that, this little kid, Antonelli, don't sleep on him. He has mastered the software, he's mastered strategy. It seems like he doesn't have any weakness, and his deployment strategy actually better than Russell's. Some of us would argue that it's better because he can set up an optimal deployment based on the fact that probably the most optimal setup is one that's aggressive, where you're able to carry more speed into the corners so that you need less energy to charge on the back straight. You need a lot less energy to charge on the back straight if you can carry more speed into the corners and use aggressive braking to also charge the car. So basically, he's charging the car through braking and downshifting like Verstappen would love to do if he had a stable car, rather than lifting and coasting, which is what um, Russell does. And when we go back to the S's, on the S's, Antonelli was taking those S's a lot faster than Russell, and therefore through the kinetic energy, he was actually getting more of a charge. Russell was getting early, peaking out earlier in the lap for energy, and Antonelli was able to carry more speed later in there, a lot because of the way he charges his car during the S's. Now, after I talk to you, Afolabi, we'll talk about why Hamilton is struggling so much at this track after we had all proclaimed that he has mastered her Leclerc. Her Leclerc, did you see her Leclerc was actually in the Zen visualizing because he can't afford to lose to Hamilton again. But before we talk about that, Mr. Farley, tell us what you think about Antonelli's brilliant back-to-back qualifiers now.
Oh, it was a brilliant race, and he's showing understanding of the behavior of the car. Very well. He understands the behavior of the car and the software. He's able to use the throttle as well as the brake to instruct the car to do things that give him maximum advantage at various points in on the track. I mean, if you look at this. He uses basically the super clipping. He tries to stay at 100% throttle, basically longer by using the software map. This basically forces the motor generator unit kinetic to act as a massive generator while the engine is still pushing the car. So by staying on power, what happens is that Kimi is able to keep the active aero mode engaged and the floor seal. So basically what he does here is he's using the battery to buy aerodynamic stability that George Russell is sacrificing. And then if you look at what Russell is doing, he is more of a lift and coast strategy traditionalist. He backs off the throttle early to let the MGUK harvest energy naturally. While this keeps his tires cool and his car balanced, he loses some time here to Kimi Antonelli. And then, like you mentioned also, Antonelli's ability to downshift aggressively, helps him to use the MGUK like almost like a parachute. And this allows him to break meters earlier before Russell. Even if the car becomes nervous under such violent deceleration, he's able to trust what we call brake-by-wire software to adjust the torque at the rear wheel, so that the car does not lose its balance. So basically, it's showing understanding of the regulations as well as the computer software. It's showing a massive understanding of this. Also, he opted for asymmetric mapping, which basically sacrifices top speed at the end of the previous straight in order to overcharge his battery. And he will now dump all that energy into a 0 to 200 kilometer burst out of the corner. So all this understanding of these things, especially making him so dominant in the Suzuka S's, shows that at such an early age and at such an early stage in the season, he understands the behavior of the car vis-a-vis the software and the new regulations. And at such a technical track, he's showing understanding beyond his years, far more than his teammate, Russell. It was a brilliant
Yeah,
performance by him.
he's been doing his homework. He's been
He's
doing
been
his
doing his
homework, and
homework.
I bet you he's
He's
been
been
doing his
doing his
homework since
homework.
last
And
year.
like you said,
And these young
he's a
breaks,
geek,
these young
more or less.
kids,
He's a geek.
17, jumps. I wouldn't call yeah, I wouldn't even call him a geek. It's just that he's working hard. He's just doing what I mean by homework is that he took this shit seriously when they brought him into Mercedes. I'm sure they had people working with him on the settings last year, and it's clear that he's doing that because he has no misunderstandings. He's not your typical 18-year-old who's having to learn things. He's jumping right in the car right now, and now he's had back-to-back weeks of out qualifying Russell, and he may even win the race. If he beats Russell today, we have a championship on our hand. And let me
Yeah,
tell you, if he beats Russell today,
absolutely.
we have a championship on our hand. And once again, we're seeing the limitations of Russell's driving because he just doesn't have the feel for grip or the ability to brake late and have this aggressive driving. And you mentioned the MGUK. The MGUK. The way he uses that thing to charge, because you would think that if he goes that fast into corners, he would run out of battery on the back end. But it means that where he's having to brake and downshift, he's recharging his battery and making sure he still has enough energy.
Absolutely.
And he's constantly using his brakes all over the place. On S's, he's using mechanisms to charge the car, which is very, very good. And we know that if you're doing that to Russell, who's a master of that, I think Russell would have to change his driving approach to beat Antonelli. But he
Antonelli.
can't change it because Russell is not the type of person who can drive aggressively with the downshifting and the braking. So let's talk about Hamilton versus Leclerc. First of all, Leclerc was seen before Q3 meditating and visualizing. I think Leclerc finally found someone who made him wake up and have to go all out and show you how fast he is. He was pushing that car through the corners at the edge. Several times he almost went past the limits of adhesion, but was able to control himself. And he's pushing that car way ahead than he should be. It's just that that car is too ragged as far as balance to deal with McLaren and Mercedes drivers, but he was able to put a tenth and a half ahead of Hamilton. But in general, Hamilton struggled this weekend. But let me go before I go to Hamilton. I want to also mention that Hamilton is struggling in relation to Leclerc because just like Antonelli, Leclerc likes a pointy car. He likes to have that feeling of looseness at the rear where he can go forward, leaning on the steering, on the front of the car, lean on the front of the car, and get through those corners. And on a high-speed track, he doesn't have to pay the price that he had to pay like in China with the snail, where you wear out your tires. So that's the advantage you have with Hamilton. And also on this track, which is already low grip and low downforce, and you don't have the feeling of being planted on the track, especially in the rear, that's just not how Hamilton likes to drive. So Hamilton has struggled all weekend all weekend this weekend, basically. And he also had another issue with a glitch, which just shows how bad these regs are, where on his Q3 lap, he lost probably a tenth of a second because to correct an oversteer snap, which he's struggling with, he modulated his throttle, basically let off the throttle. So the software interpreted this to mean that he wanted to change his deployment strategy for the lap, and he therefore lost a tenth of a second. This is unacceptable. Once again, I'll say it: F1 is not racing. If the software keeps getting in the way, it did that to Leclerc last week or last in the Chinese Grand Prix, where when he makes a mistake and lets off the throttle or something, it changes his deployment and didn't give him enough boost on the straightaway. So this is not acceptable. But I think in general, it's a combination of Leclerc stepping up his game and also this just being the type of track. High speed tracks, Leclerc is going to beat Hamilton. Low speed tracks, Hamilton will most likely beat Leclerc because those tracks you need better tire management and a more sophisticated deployment strategy. What are your thoughts on Falabi?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Hamilton is more or less, it appears he's treating this particular car like a science project instead of a real Formula One car. Basically, if you look at the incident where he had a violent rear end snap through one of the S's while he caught during the qualifying. I think it was the car's brake. The energy recovery system reacted to a sudden spike in the wheel speed. So
Yeah.
basically, the software now sensed some kind of instability. Immediately, it automatically shifted his energy deployment map to safe mode to prevent a spin. What that now did for him was that it took some time away from him, especially it now made the car look very stationary. It lost a bit of time there. And then if you look at his corner speed too and his straight line speed, it wasn't as impressive as expected. I think he's still searching for a stable rear,
He's
basically.
having yeah, he's having grip issues and he's also having tires that are 4 degrees cooler than Leclerc. So he's having problems getting those tires warmed up on this track. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, I think he's prioritizing a car that will snap on him, basically, and at a high at a track like Suzuka, if you're looking for stability, it often leads to slightly more conservative entry speed compared to Leclerc's more kind of aggressive style. So I think this dilemma is sort of affecting him. Like I said, he doesn't seem to be handling this car the way he's
Yeah.
supposed to. He's looking at it as if it's a project or a science
No.
experiment, basically.
Well, it's not his fault though, because it's the algorithm. You have to set up your race mapping. So what it means then is that you can't make mistakes. Because if you make mistakes, the algorithm
There's
will
very
think that
little margin for error.
and this is why what's his name is doing is so fantastic, Antonelli, because if he makes a tiny mistakes, it'll mess up his algorithm. But let me tell you, if Hamilton's looking for stability in Suzuka, that's like looking for stability with a by with a wife who used to be a prostitute that sells you cocaine.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
You get the joke. You're looking for a stable relationship with a prostitute. That's what it's like if you're looking for grip on high speed Suzuka. You ain't gonna find no stability there. So
Yeah,
once again, which is a good thing about F1. Suzuka, no matter how much you put all this algorithm stuff, it will challenge your ability as a
Of course.
driver,
Exactly.
regardless.
Those S's are crazy.
All right, so yeah, so I'm going to predict that I don't see any reason why to say why Antonelli won't win. Usually, we would say that maybe he got faster for a lap, but he doesn't have racecraft anymore, and Russell will pass him. But that's becoming a myth. So I don't see any reason not to believe that uh, Antonelli will win the race, and what's his name will come. Russell will come second. That's what I'm predicting. I don't care who comes third. Third in qualifying was who? Was it Piastri? Piastri, yeah, I got it right. Piastri came third. Leclerc came fourth. Norris came fifth
Then
and
Norris
sixth.
came fifth, and then it was Hamilton that came sixth. Yes.